Welcome to Auto News Talk. When you picture the automotive industry, I think your mind probably goes straight to the glamorous side of
Oh,
things.
for sure. The shiny showroom floors.
Right. The dramatic lighting, the smell of fresh upholstery, that iconic moment you finally get handed the keys.
Yeah, the fun stuff.
Exactly. But there is a quiet, incredibly high stakes war happening for your wallet right now. And it is definitely not taking place under those showroom spotlights.
No, it really isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, the front lines of automotive economics have completely shifted.
Yeah.
The real fight is playing out back in the service bays and the finance offices and inside these massive off-site logistics hubs that, honestly, the average car buyer will never even see.
Right. So we're setting out to walk you through this evolving terrain of dealership survival. We're going to map out exactly how dealerships are reinventing themselves to optimize their physical real estate, how they're leaning into artificial intelligence to speed things up, and crucially, how they are learning the hard way when to pull the plug on technology that goes too far.
It's a really complex landscape to navigate. The margins for error across the industry are getting razor thin, while the expectations from consumers just keep accelerating.
Absolutely. So let's unpack this by starting where the real money is made. Because selling cars is the flashy part, but fixing them, that's the foundational bedrock of dealership survival.
Oh, 100%.
There's this fascinating study from Cox Automotive focused on fixed operations, which is just the industry term for parts and service, and it really maps out this shift. The central insight from their data is that as consumers keep their cars longer, service departments are becoming the absolute lifeblood of dealership profitability.
Yeah.
But, and this is the crazy part, they're achieving this even as they lose overall market share to independent repair shops.
Right, and we have to look at the mechanics of why that's happening. The Cox Automotive study points out that consumers are holding onto their vehicles much longer, disposing of them at an average age of 10 years old.
10 years old, wow.
Yeah, a full decade.
Yeah.
And when a vehicle hits that 10-year mark, the compounding maintenance requirements are massive. I mean, you aren't just doing oil changes anymore.
Right, you're doing real work.
Exactly. You're looking at timing belts, suspension overhauls, major electrical work.
Which totally explains the revenue spike. The Cox data notes that dealership service and parts revenue has surged 33%.
It's a huge jump.
It really is. It's hitting an average of over $9 million per dealership. 9.23 million to be exact.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at this data, and I'm kind of struggling to square that massive revenue jump with the other key statistic. Their actual market share of service visits dropped from 33% down to 29%.
Well, it sounds counterintuitive until you look at the psychology of the car owner. You have dealerships pulling in record revenue through the service drive,
Yep.
basically maximizing the dollars spent per visit, but they're bleeding customer volume. Yeah, customers are drifting away to independent mechanics because there's this deeply ingrained perception that the dealership is simply too expensive for older cars.
It's like the ultimate leaky bucket. You're pouring more water in than ever before with high repair bills, but the holes at the bottom are getting wider.
That's a great way to put it.
Though the Cox data does point out one specific demographic that is entirely captive to the dealership, and that's electric vehicle owners.
Yes.
According to the study, EV owners account for 67% of service visits at dealerships.
Which makes perfect logistical sense, right? Your local neighborhood mechanic who has spent 30 years turning wrenches on combustion engines, they likely don't have the specialized infrastructure for this.
Right, the high voltage training.
Exactly. The high voltage training or the proprietary diagnostic software required to work on complex EV architecture. So for EV owners, the dealership is often the only viable option.
But for everyone else, how do dealerships plug the holes in that leaky bucket? How do they stop the drift to independent shops? The Cox study highlights a really brilliant, deeply psychological mechanism.
Yeah, the video trick.
Yes. Sending customers photos or videos during a service visit increases the average repair order spend by about $230.
I'd actually take that a step further and look at why that works so effectively. If the service advisor calls you on the phone while you're at work and says, your brake pads are dangerously thin, it'll be $500, your immediate instinct is skepticism.
Oh, for sure. You feel like you're being upsold.
Exactly, you get defensive.
Yeah.
But if that same advisor texts you a high-definition video of the technician under your car, physically pointing to your worn-out brake pad and comparing to a brand new one, the dynamic completely changes.
It really does.
Transparency removes the friction. You aren't being sold to, you're being educated. That visual proof builds instant trust and, well, Trust opens wallets.
And the broader implication of that trust is enormous. Service isn't just about maintaining the vehicle, it's the direct pipeline for future sales.
Definitely.
The Cox data estimates that missing a customer's first service appointment costs a dealer around $12,000 in lifetime spend.
Which is wild.
It is. If you lose their trust in the service bay, you lose the revenue for that repair, and you practically guarantee they will not buy their next car from your showroom.
It's a catastrophic loss of lifetime value.
I do keep looking at these massive tech investments, though, the video platforms, the integrated texting suites, and the glaring question for me, the thing this study doesn't answer, is about the smaller, lower-performing, independent-style dealerships.
Right.
The Cox study lays out the benefits clearly, but what it doesn't answer is how those smaller operations can actually afford to implement these high-tech digital systems. The capital barrier to compete for that consumer trust just seems incredibly high.
That is a very real barrier. And for the dealership groups that do have the capital, the optimization doesn't stop at buying digital software. It extends to the physical real estate itself.
Right.
If you want to maximize the efficiency of your highly profitable service bays, you have to look critically at how you use your physical space.
Which serves as a perfect bridge to a strategic move covered by Auto News Talk regarding the West Motor Company. They're looking at their physical footprint and realizing that to maximize their urban service bays, they have to get the unglamorous logistics out of the city.
Yes. The report details that West Motor Company acquired a sprawling 23,000 square foot site in Edenbridge, which is situated outside the M25 orbital around London.
Let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around the logistics here, because this massive new property isn't a customer-facing showroom, right?
No, not at all.
It's strictly designated for pre-delivery inspections, or PDI.
Right, and understanding the mechanics of PDI is crucial here. When a new car arrives from the factory, it isn't ready to be handed to a customer.
Right, it's covered in plastic.
Exactly. It needs protective films peeled off, rigorous diagnostic checks, massive software updates installed, and license plates physically fitted. It's tedious, time-consuming work.
It's sort of like a high-end restaurant trying to operate. You would never put your noisy, chaotic prep kitchen right in the middle of your main dining room.
Oh, that's a phenomenal analogy.
Thanks. You'd move the prep work to a cheaper building next door so you could fit more paying customers at tables in the main space.
Yeah, and by moving the PDI process out to the suburbs, West Motor Company avoids urban bottlenecks entirely. You absolutely do not want your highly skilled inner-city technicians doing routine software updates in an expensive urban service bay.
Right, when they could be doing high-margin, complex diagnostic repair work.
Exactly.
It just makes fundamental economic sense. The implication connects right back to the Cox data. Physical space optimization is just as crucial as digital optimization. Moving those low-margin logistics off-site frees up incredibly valuable inner-city real estate for the exact service bays that are driving that $9 million average revenue.
Because efficiency dictates survival. If your real estate is expensive, every square foot must generate maximum yield.
The strategic logic is bulletproof, but I will point out a pretty massive blind spot in the Auto News Talk piece. They nerd the acquisition, but what they don't answer is the financial cost.
Yeah, that was missing.
They don't disclose any of the financial terms for the Edenbridge deal. We have no idea what that 23,000 square foot facility cost, so it's impossible to calculate the actual break-even point on a suburban logistics hub of that scale.
That remains an open question, certainly. But the long-term value of untangling urban logistics is a trend we're seeing across the board.
So if optimizing physical space is one half of the dealership equation, the digital space is the other. Dealerships are fundamentally changing how they interact with you, the consumer, and how they operate behind the scenes.
And this transition is aggressive. Another report published by Auto News Talk looks closely at how dealers are leaning heavily into artificial intelligence to accelerate operations, cater to digital-first buyers, and drastically reduce in-store wait times. The piece highlights that 90% of dealerships are either using or actively planning to use AI.
90% is practically universal adoption.
It is. Practically speaking, they're utilizing AI-driven precision marketing, optimizing dealership websites for natural language AI searches, and massively expanding digital retailing platforms so consumers can basically structure their entire finance deal from their living room.
But the detail from that article that I found absolutely fascinating wasn't about the digital showroom. It was a logistical trick in the service department.
Oh, the Uber thing.
Yes, dealerships are now using platforms like Uber for business to expedite same-day parts deliveries.
Which is a brilliant workflow adaptation.
It really is when you think about how a service bay operates. If a car is up on a hydraulic lift and the technician discovers it needs a specific alternator, that lift is now occupied. The technician is idle, and the dealership is losing money by the minute. Instead of maintaining an expensive dedicated fleet of parts delivery vans or waiting for a regional distributor to make an afternoon drop-off, they just hail an Uber to act as a courier for the part.
They're leveraging existing gig economy infrastructure to solve a hyper-local B2B bottleneck.
Yeah.
And the implication of all this digital and logistical speed is entirely focused on the consumer's time. Time is the ultimate metric of satisfaction.
Absolutely.
The Auto News Talk piece emphasizes that buyers who complete most of their journey digitally save about 45 minutes at the physical store. Giving a customer nearly an hour of their Saturday back is a massive competitive advantage.
I completely agree that saving time is the ultimate win, but I have to hit pause on some of this hype. That article in Auto News Talk was clearly labeled as sponsored content.
Right, you have to be careful with that.
Right. Yeah, it features vendors boasting about their tools, claiming things like an AI search mode generates 3 times more leads. What the piece doesn't answer is whether those self-reported vendor metrics actually hold up in the real world across diverse regional markets, or if it's mostly marketing spin designed to sell expensive software to eager dealerships.
It is always wise to scrutinize the metrics when the vendor is the one providing them. And honestly, that skepticism leads us right into a critical pivot. We've seen where technology solves physical constraints and where it accelerates logistics, but we have to look at where it completely fails.
This is the reality check portion of the journey, because implementing technology just for the sake of looking modern can create massive liabilities. Case in point, a deep dive analysis in Auto News Talk covering Truth in Lending Act, or TILA compliance. The central insight here is a stark warning that AI cannot replace human oversight in auto finance.
It absolutely cannot, and the mechanism behind why it fails is important to understand. Taylor regulations and annual percentage rate calculations are strictly, rigidly rule-bound. They require calculus-level precision. The problem with generative AI is that it is fundamentally a large language model. It's a predictive text engine designed to guess the next logical word in a sentence based on training data. It is not a calculator running hard math.
Which means it struggles immensely with the patchwork of jurisdictional variances, state usury limits, and shifting fee treatments across different regions.
Exactly. When you ask a predictive text engine to structure an auto loan, it will confidently generate a document that looks highly professional but might be mathematically illegal.
The Auto News Talk analysis provided a genuinely alarming example of this. An AI amortization tool was asked to produce a payment schedule. It output a beautiful, elegantly formatted schedule that completely violated a specific state's ban on compounding interest.
Wow, and that single hallucination corrupts the entire TILA calculation, rendering the auto contract legally invalid.
It is like asking a poet to do your taxes. The output might sound incredibly confident, the formatting might be flawless, but it is absolutely going to get you audited by the IRS.
That is a very apt way to look at it. The implication here carries severe stakes for a dealership. State examiners judge accuracy. They do not give bonus points for the cool, cutting-edge tech you used in the back office.
Right.
Small AI hallucination errors, when scaled across an entire loan portfolio of thousands of vehicles, can trigger massive, business-ending regulatory fines.
It's a great warning, but I find it incredibly frustrating that the analysis leaves us hanging. It tells us generative AI is a massive liability for loan compliance, but what it doesn't answer is exactly which verified, human-audited, rule-based software engines dealerships should actually be buying to solve the problem.
Yeah, they leave that out entirely.
It highlights the landmine but doesn't give you the map to walk around it.
It forces dealerships to do their own rigorous vetting, which many simply lack the in-house technical expertise to do. But sometimes the catastrophic technology failure isn't buried in the back office compliance department. Sometimes it's sitting right in the dashboard of the product itself.
Which forces automakers to pull the emergency brake and completely reset. Reporting from Cars.com details exactly this scenario with the Volkswagen ID.4. VW is halting production of the ID.4 electric SUV at their Chattanooga, Tennessee plant to make room on the assembly line for the gas-powered Atlas.
Now, they are planning to introduce a future redesigned version of the ID.4 for the U.S. market, but the current iteration suffered from a very specific, highly visible usability problem.
The screens and the controls. They were widely criticized as odd and deeply frustrating. This is a classic example of prioritizing flashy tech over the driver's experience. Changing the climate control or navigating the submenus required taking your eyes off the road to interact with capacitive touch sliders that lacked any tactile feedback.
Yeah, no one liked those. And the Cars.com piece highlights a stunning rehearsal by Volkswagen. They've essentially admitted that their tech-heavy interface was a misstep. For the next iteration of their vehicles, they're returning to traditional physical switches for the windows and actual tactile dials for the climate control.
It is so vindicating to hear that we are getting actual volume knobs and window switches back.
It really is.
Though the Cars.com piece leaves one massive question unanswered. The timeline. They don't specify exactly when this redesigned user-friendly ID.4 will actually return to the market.
We'll have to wait for the production schedules to update. But when you step back and look at the entire landscape we've mapped out, a very clear pattern emerges across these sources. The first major theme is that efficiency is survival.
Right.
We see that clearly with West Motor Company moving their unglamorous PDI logistics out to the suburbs to save their prime real estate, and we see it with dealerships treating Uber as their private parts courier to keep the service bays moving.
And the second theme building on that is that transparency builds trust, and trust builds revenue. The Cox Automotive study proved that simply showing a customer a visual video of their repair needs spikes the repair order revenue.
Absolutely.
And on the flip side, the Auto News Talk piece on TILA compliance proved that you need absolute rigorous transparency and accuracy in your finance math, or state regulators will shut you down.
I would add a third theme to that structure. The customer experience ultimately dictates the success of any technology. Digital retailing saving a customer 45 minutes in the showroom is a massive win. But forcing a driver to navigate a complex touchscreen just to roll down a window, as we saw with the original VW ID.4, is a massive failure.
But navigating all of this is incredibly difficult for the industry because there are massive competing interests at play. You have this intense contradiction between the push for high-speed digital automation, which we saw heavily promoted in the AI sales article, versus the absolute need for slow, meticulous human accuracy, like we saw with the AI finance compliance piece.
Yeah.
The move fast and break things philosophy of Silicon Valley just does not work when you're dealing with state usury laws.
It absolutely does not. And the second major contradiction is between the automakers, who desperately want to pack their cars with futuristic, screen-heavy technology to appear cutting edge, versus the actual consumers who are practically begging for the return of simple, traditional controls.
So if you're running a dealership or designing a car, what is the ultimate takeaway here?
The practical mandate is that the industry must stop implementing technology just for the sake of looking modern. Every single tool, whether it's a 23,000 square foot offsite inspection center, a gig economy app for delivering an alternator, or a physical tactile window switch, must explicitly solve a friction point for the user. If the technology creates friction rather than removing it, it has to go.
That is the perfect place to land as we wrap up this segment of Auto News Talk. It really puts the evolution of the whole industry into perspective. Whether it's a hyper-advanced AI chatbot calculating the parameters of your auto loan in the cloud, or just the satisfying physical click of a window switch under your finger, the absolute best innovation is simply the one that actually works when you need it to.
Function over flash, every single time.
Next time you take your car in for a service appointment or start shopping for a new vehicle online, keep an eye on how your local dealership balances the digital screen with actual human service. That balance is the future of the industry. Thanks for joining us on Auto News Talk.